Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we're going to talk about all the books that I read in January and February. Okay, so in January I read 7 books. The first book I read was Apprentice to the Villain by Hannah Nicole Meir. I don't want to talk too much about this one because it is a sequel to Assistant to the Villain, and there is another book, and I think it's the last one. I think it's going to be a trilogy that's going to be released in, I believe it's September. But yeah, I gave this one a 4 stars. Assistant to the Villain was a 3.5 star for me, but I just really enjoyed this one a lot more. I'm excited to keep reading the series. I will say this one picks up right where they left off in the first one, and of course, in Miss Meir fashion here, it also ends in a cliffhanger, and I cannot wait for the 3rd book to come out. The next book I read was The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. This is actually her first book that she published, I believe. And I read Song of Solomon by Toni Morrison in high school, and I absolutely fell in love with her writing because of how raw and real she is and doesn't hold back. And I love how she connects a lot of symbols and themes throughout her books, not only just following one main idea, but other things, and you learn a lot from them. The Bluest Eye actually takes place in Toni Morrison's hometown, Lorain, Ohio, and it follows an African-American girl named Pecola who thinks and is told that she's ugly because of the color of her skin and the way that she looks. And so she craves and wants to have blue eyes. In her mind, she thinks that that will make her pretty. And so then we follow Pecola as she comes of age and what kind of happens to her in her life and things around her. There are a lot of controversial topics in this book. I would check your trigger warnings before reading it, but I really enjoyed this book. This was a 4-star read for me, and Toni Morrison just has a way of making a reader's eyes open and understand a world that they might not understand. So that's why I appreciate her. This was also my book club's book pick of the month, and we all rated this actually very similarly. The next book I read was 9 Liars by Maureen Johnson. This is the 5th book in the Truly Devious series. I read all of the 4 books last year in 2024, and I kind of spread them out. I didn't read them all at once, and I listened to the audiobooks for a couple of them, but I also picked up the physical copy as well. This one I listened to the audiobook, and I will say Box in the Woods, I think, is the 4th book. That is my favorite one out of the series. I didn't really like the first 2, which is, if you've read the Truly Devious series, you understand. There is a crime at a school that happened, and our main character is trying to solve it, and she goes to this school, attends this school for other reasons, but wanted to go there to solve this mystery. So it is a YA mystery thriller series, and the first 3 books followed that main case, and then the 4th book is a different case, and the 5th book is another case as well. I feel like the series could have been just fine ending at the 4th one because 9 Liars just really wasn't it for me. I did rate this a 3 star on Goodreads, but it's really more like a 2.5 because I enjoyed parts of it, but I just feel like it was added to have another book in the series. I don't know. It just really wasn't it. I feel like Maureen Johnson followed the same, not theme, but I feel like Maureen Johnson did a very good job in the first 4 books, making it about the true crime and solving this mystery. And then the 5th book, I feel like maybe people were requesting and wanting more about the relationships that occur in the books, and she made this one to kind of close that for their fans and the readers. But at the same time, I'm like, I wasn't interested in that part at all. I was interested in the Truly Devious series because of the mystery to it, if that makes sense. So I do recommend the Truly Devious series, but I feel like I recommend, out of all of them, book 4. And you could read book 4, in my opinion, without having to read 2 and 3. I believe that you should read book 1 so you can understand who the characters are, but skip to book 4, just skip to book 4. The next book I read was Interesting Facts About Space by Emily Austin. I rated this a 4 stars. It's probably more of a like 3.5, 3.75 to be honest, the more that I think about it, because I haven't really thought about this book since I've read it. I do remember enjoying my experience while reading this book, and I think that's why I actually gave it a 4 stars. I've never read Emily Austin before, but she has a very interesting way of writing. This book follows Enid, and she is obsessed about space and has so many random facts about space. And she also has a phobia to bald men. But throughout the story, you kind of get into her mind and how Emily Austin sets up the book. It's like we are literally seeing what is going on in her mind and how she processes things and how she doesn't process things. And I haven't read a book like this before, so I thought it was really interesting to read something like this. I think and it is a very like quiet to herself character. She has a lot going on, and you discover those things throughout the book. There are relationships and connections that she has with certain people that I think are very sweet and special. And there were really, really special moments throughout the book. And those moments really like sparked up this rating for the book for me. And the next book I picked up in January was None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell. I was recommended that I listen to the audiobook for this book instead of picking it up. And I kind of did both, followed along while reading. And wow, if you're gonna read this book, listen to the audiobook because it kept me on my toes and I had just the most amazing time. This was a 4.5 star for me. I do know I bumped it up to a 5 star on Goodreads, but it really is a 4.5 or a 4.75. There was like maybe 1 or 2 things that I called, and I think that's why it wasn't quite a 5 star for me. But the overall experience of reading and listening to this book was insane. I really, really enjoyed it. The next book I read was Done and Dusted by Lila Sage. This is the first book in the Rebel Blue Ranch series, and this is my first cowboy romance. So Done and Dusted follows Emmy Ryder, who is a awesome horse rider. There's a little bit of an accident and she impulsively breaks up with her boyfriend and moves back home. She's just like really scared to ever ride again, basically. And then she goes to their like hometown bar, and she runs into her older brother's best friend, Luke. Let me tell you, Luke is hot. Anyway, there is this little spark that he always knew he had, and she is kind of discovering for the first time. So we kind of follow how they help each other and what kind of grows from there. This is brother's best friend trope and a small town romance kind of vibe here as well. I am not one to usually gravitate towards spice. So I do want to say though that if you like take the spice out of this book, I think it's still a great story, and that's why I want to continue reading the series. And I enjoyed this book. This was a 3.5 star for me. But yeah, I am really excited to read. I think it's Swift and Saddled that's next, and it's following her brother Wes. So I'm very excited for that. And my last read of January was my first 5-star read of the year, Powerless by Lauren Roberts. I just recently dove into romantasy, I guess would be more accurate than straight fantasy. And I'm eating it up. I don't know what kept me from diving in not sooner, but anyway. So the world of Powerless has elites and ordinaries, and the elites, there was this plague that came and they developed powers from a sickness, and they are the elites. And then there's people who are born ordinary, who are simply that, they're ordinaries, and they were banished from the kingdom because the elites want to rule the world. And the main characters of our book, Peyton, is an ordinary who is disguised as a psychic to kind of stay within the elites. Our male main character, Kai, is the prince of the elites. There's a little run-in that they have with each other, and she ends up saving him, and then ends up in these things called the Purging Trials, which basically try to help get rid of people who don't have what it takes, basically. I've heard a lot that if you liked the Hunger Games, you would like this, and I agree. I completely agree. I I haven't picked up the second book yet, but I am excited to read that one because the third book is coming out. And what I have heard is that people didn't like the second one as much. But I also have heard that there's more of like the relationship and character development and building in that book rather than the actual trials happening and all of that happening. So this has a good mix of both, and I hope and assume that the third book is going to have more of that action that we're missing in the second book, but I haven't read the second book, so that's just all on speculation. But anyway, first 5-star of the year, Powerless by Lauren Roberts. I love her. She's awesome. And yeah. Okay, let's dive into my February reads. I read 10 books this month and I read all the books on my TBR. Isn't that crazy? I've never done that before. I'm literally so proud of myself. I made it a mission to try, but also I was just like reading really fast, and I did that reading challenge a couple weeks ago, and so it made me just read more books, and then I was just eating the books up, and there we go. Later in this video, you're actually going to see a flip through of my February reading wrap up in my journal, and we'll kind of talk a little bit about how I add those in. But for now, let's talk about these books. The first book that I read in February was a carryover from January. I don't usually carry over books, but I had started at the end of January and I just really wanted to finish it. I wasn't just gonna throw it off, but I added it to my February TBR, and that is Some Shall Break by Ellie Marney. This is actually the second book in the None Shall Sleep trilogy. No, I don't have the third book yet. It just recently came out this month, but it's in paperback. And what are these? Hardcover. Yeah, I'm really disappointed about that. Anyway, so Some Shall Break is the second book in the series, so I won't talk too much about it, but I want you to know that this is a YA mystery thriller, true crime series. It is set in the early 80s as well, set in 1882. I don't know when the third book is set, but I believe it's just right a continuation after this one. So the series follows two characters, Emma and Travis, who are two teenage serial killer survivors who are recruited by the FBI to kind of figure out and question and communicate with this juvenile serial killer. I would say if you liked the Natural series, you may also like this series. Yeah, these are both 3 stars for me. I made this one maybe 3.5, but I know that this one is a 3-star. There's just like some things that I'm like, you know? But I do recommend reading it if you liked the Natural series. That's why I gravitated to these books and wanted to read them. And if you liked it, I believe that you would like these too. The next book I read in February was Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood. I rated this a 3.5 star, and the reason why I didn't give it a 4 is because I didn't understand the science. Love Theoretically is about our female main character, Elsie, who is a theoretical physicist who has kind of many different lives going on. She currently is a adjunct faculty at many different universities, but wants to be like have a tenure and work in labs and do all these things. Because those things don't make her enough money, she found this app that people can pay you to be their fake girlfriend. So she kind of does that by night. So she finally gets this interview for a tenure position as a theoretical physicist professor, and it kind of all comes crashing down when the older brother of the person she's fake dating is actually on this panel to interview her. And he is also somebody that she like absolutely hates because of what he did to the theoretical physicist's world. There's some lore there. Anyway, so like the first half of the book, we're following her getting the interviews, doing the thing, trying to get this job. He is or is not helping her, very like confused who she is because he thinks that this is his brother's girlfriend. And then like halfway through the book, things start to change. I really did like the relationship between Elsie and Jack. Like I think that they were really good for each other. But I just couldn't get past the science part. I was confused all the time. And I loved the love hypothesis so much, but I understood that. Like I understood the science part. This, I was confused all the time. And this one is actually, in my opinion, heavily more science than romance. but I loved the romance aspect. That's why I couldn't get past giving it a higher rating. And that's okay. But I still recommend it and I still love it. And also, I think you could read this book without the spice and be fine as well. The next book I read this month was Family Lore by Elizabeth Acevedo. This is actually her first adult novel. She wrote The Poet X, which is a 5-star read for me. I loved that book. And so that's why I wanted to pick up this book. This is a 2.5 star for me. So Family Lore follows a Dominican American family of 4 sisters, and one of the sisters, named Flor, has like this gift where she can predict or see someone is going to die when their death comes. And she has a prediction and wants to have a living wake, and she gathers all her sisters for this event, and they don't know if it's her death or somebody else's death that she's predicting, but she brings all the family together. It's told in different voices of all of the sisters and just kind of talking about their life and days leading up to the wake and after the wake and all that. I rated this a 2.5 star. It's not that I didn't like it. I listened to the audiobook, and how it is set up, I would not recommend listening to it because I never knew when it was changing, who was speaking, what are we talking about, and I was just confused like a majority of the time. And I heavily think that is the reason why it is such a low rating for me. But there are some great things in this book that I enjoyed. I should have known the first like hour of me listening to it that I should have just picked up the book, and that's okay. That's my B. Will I give this another shot? I don't know. But I would not recommend listening to the audiobook if you are not going to like pick up the physical copy and follow along. The next book I read was Love at First Book by Jen McKinley. This book is about a librarian named Emily who gets an opportunity of a lifetime, and her favorite author of some of the books that got her through a really, really dark time in her life offers her a job at her library in an Irish village in Ireland. She works at this bookstore, and actually the author asks her to help her write her last novel. It's been a long time, and this is like there's some unanswered questions from the latest book, and she needs help writing the last one. So she works at the bookstore, and she works for this grumpy guy named Kyron, who happens to actually be the author's son. She doesn't discover that until she gets there. So anyway, throughout the book, she helps her favorite author write the last novel. We have a little bit of found family. We have a little bit of grumpy sunshine romance happening. And I just love me a book that has anything to do with books. So I thought this was really sweet and cute. I enjoyed the relationship between Emily and Kyron. And there is like some serious topics that are talked about in the book, and I really appreciated that. It's not my favorite romance read, but I would pick up another Jen McKinley book, if that makes sense. If the lighting changed, which it most definitely did, there's kids outside, and I just freaking know that they would be making fun of me. So my next read of February was my first 6-star read ever. I think that I probably have other 6-star reads, but I immediately gave this a 6-star because of my overall experience reading the book. I just had the best time ever, and that is The Rom-Commers by Katherine Center. If you don't know much about me, I am a Katherine Center geek. I freaking love her. I haven't read all her books yet, but that is my mission because every single book has an underlying meaning and message, and she is just so good. A lot of my favorite quotes are from this book and from other books that she has written. So anyway, The Rom-Commers follows Emma, who is obsessed with rom-coms and wants to be and aspires to be a screenplay writer for rom-coms, like to write things that enters contests and wins and all that jazz. But she is a main caretaker for her dad because of a tragic accident, so she kind of has put her life on hold to be that for him. Well, she actually got an opportunity to work with and co-write with her inspiration, Charlie Yates, who is this big-time award-winning screenplay writer. How she gets this job is actually from her high school sweetheart, ex-boyfriend, who is now her best friend, Logan, who has been actually working for Charlie this whole time, and she didn't know about it. So she flies across the country to hopefully and work for her inspiration and her idol, Charlie Yates. Well, when she gets there, he doesn't want anyone to write for him, to work with him. Maybe Logan has kept from some things from Charlie and wasn't completely honest with Emma either. So Emma is like, I'm not gonna be flying across the country for nothing to happen. So she stands up for herself, she puts her foot down, and she pretty much proves her worth to Charlie. After some tugging here and there, he finally agrees, and they are going to write a rom-com script together. So throughout the story, we see how they work together, how they live together, because she is gonna be living with him as well. And this is kind of like a forced proximity, not really enemies to the lovers, like haters to lovers maybe. They get to know each other, they open up to each other, we find a little bit more about Emma and her past and Charlie and his past. And this is just so beautiful. I laughed, I cried, I kicked my feet, I screamed, I giggled. I was just having the absolute time of my life reading this book, and friggin' highly recommend. The next book I read was One Dark Window by Rachel Gillick. I gave this a 3.5 star. This is the first book in the Shepherd King duology. I had an okay time reading this book. It isn't my favorite fantasy book. This is more of a gothic fantasy romance book, I believe. It was a little bit hard to follow at times. There was some things weren't connecting the dots, in my opinion. I do want to read the next book because it did end on a cliffhanger that I kind of saw coming, but also not. So yeah, we'll see. The next book I picked up was All the Ever Afters by Danielle Teller. This follows the untold story of Cinderella's stepmom. Her name is Agnes, and it kind of just shows her upbringing and who she is and why the way that she is. The first half of this book, I didn't like it. Was not interested, and I know that the whole world building at the beginning is important, but I just wasn't hooked. And then something happens to Agnes, and I was like, oh, I want to kind of know more. But if you like Cinderella and really like Cinderella and just love to read all things in that realm, I think you should pick this up. This is kind of a maybe. I had an okay time, but yeah, 3 stars. And the next book I picked up was Tangled Up in You by Christina Lauren. I guess similar reaction like All the Other Afters. This is a modern retelling of Rapunzel, literally. It follows Tangled almost to a T, just if they were in college in today. And in the book's defense, is what I have kept saying to people, is that this is the first romance that I read after the rom-commers, and so the expectations were way up here, and this did not even reach it. This is a 2-star for me. I just hated it. I don't even think this is young adult, but I've been saying it's young adult, and I don't think it is young adult. But that's what it feels like to me, with maybe one spy scene that was unnecessary, I think. I don't even remember. Bro. Yeah. I only recommend if you are literally obsessed, like the other one, if you are obsessed with Rapunzel and you don't mind the cheesiness of it, because yes, Tangled is kind of cheesy, but I love Tangled. And I just I was hoping and wanting this to have its own twist on it and not literally follow it side by side. If you put the movie and this side by side, the screenplay even, I feel like it would be identical. And I was hoping and wanting just a little bit more. And if it was trying to be modern, reimagining, I can see how this could potentially be real life, but I don't know. I just had way too high expectations and it didn't meet them, and so yeah. I mean, I still want to read the other books because I love Mulan and that's the one coming out this year. So my next read is our book club pick of the month, which was The Friend Zone by Abby Jimenez. This was a 2-star, a 2-er. Me and the besties all agree, have the same opinion, have the same rating on this book. This is her first book, Miss Abby Jimenez's first book. And I am so sad to say that it was so low of a rating because I love Part of Your World series. I love it. I love all 3 of those books. Part of Your World and Just for the Summer are 5-star reads for me. And yours truly is a 4.5. So like, it is a great, those are great books. I love them. And the reason why I love Abby Jimenez, well, I wanted to read all her books because she is just an auto-author for me at this point. So this follows our 2 main characters, Kristen and Josh, who are the best man and maid of honor to their best friends, Sloan and Brandon. They kind of meet in a fender bender before they're supposed to meet for the wedding. And it's kind of like, I don't know. One thing about Abby Jimenez is that she puts like real life serious content in her books to like as a grasp, as a hook you in kind of thing. I see from reading this book, I see where she wanted to go while also reading the other 3 books that she has. And in my opinion, the reason why this one just didn't hit for me is that she had this idea of where she was going with these 2 characters and then just kind of like trauma dumped us. Because there's just things in this that didn't really need to happen at all for them to get together, if that makes sense. And Kristen is going through this like really serious medical thing, and she, I don't know, it just really didn't hit like those other books do. And I guess I'm glad that I read this later, because if I read this first, I definitely would not be picking up any of those other books. But because I read those first, like, I'm gonna be very picky and stickler about this series. I do want to read the second book because I know that one is the POV of the best friend in this book, and I know that more people like that book over The Friend Zone and then the 3rd book in this series. I'm really sad that I rated an Abby Jimenez book this low. Yeah. The last book that I read this month is another 5-star read of the year, The Prison Healer by Lynette Noni. I absolutely ate this book up. I had a great time reading it, and I loved it. So this follows our main character, Kiva, who is sent to a prison called Zalandov, I believe that's how you pronounce it. She is actually the prison's healer. So anybody who gets sick, hurt, wounded, goes to her, and she kind of works that realm. That's what her job is in the prison. Now, she has a new prisoner come who is supposedly the rebel queen. Kiva basically has to make sure that this rebel queen is healed and is healthy enough to undergo a trial by ordeal, where she has to basically go on these all 4 elements of trials: earth, water, air, and fire. If she can undergo them, that she is deemed worthy of survival. And basically these trials are made where you will not survive. She actually gets this message from her family that the rebel queen, don't let her die, we are coming. So she's trying to figure out what does she need to do, because this person is like really sick and she's not getting better and she's not supposed to let her die. And so she actually volunteers to undergo these trials for the rebel queen, which is freaking crazy. And if Kiva survives, then herself and the rebel queen are set free and will be released from the prison. But anyway, so like that's the main thing that's happening and what we follow Kiva going through these trials. She also has some other friends in the prison. We have a character named Tig, who is this little boy who has this cutest lisp, and he's very sweet. We also have another prisoner named Jarvan, who is sent like in the very first couple of pages and first chapters. She heals him and kind of carries him and helps him throughout what the prison process is going to be. And there's also a character named Nari, who is a guard who kind of like low-key helps her out a little bit and doesn't really ever punish her. This is the first book in the Prison Healer trilogy. I believe that's what this trilogy is called. This first one, we are in the prison and we are seeing how the prison works, and we are seeing what the prison does to these prisoners and what Kiva does. And then she undergoes through these trials to kind of help and save the rebel queen, and she hasn't seen her family in a really long time, and she's just trying to make sense and want to see her family again. So the ending really freaking, I didn't know really anything at all going into this book. I went in blind, basically. I'm glad that I did, because I feel like if I had any outside influence about what this book was, I would have seen some things coming. And I actually was like gooped and gagged at the ending. And it was sitting at like a 4.25 for me, but the ending really like made it bump up to a 5, because I was just like, what? And I was sitting there and I was thinking, you know that like meme of the 3 Spider-Mans going, that was me connecting the dots. I'm still shooketh. I'm literally still shook. I highly recommend. I freaking loved this book. Now that we know all the reads that I read in February, we are gonna go to my reading journal so you can kind of see what I do to keep the stats for the month. So here is my reading journal for 2025. I've already done like a full flip through already, so we won't go through every single page, just a little bit of like my monthly stuff. So remember that this is the color coding for my star ratings, and that is how I put the books in here. As you can see, got a little bit of almost all the colors happening, not really, but kind of feeling the same thing about everything here. Remember that the next page, it's color coded based off of the month that I've read the book and like the number of the book that I've read, my Goodreads tracker, and then obviously the days that I finished a book. As you can see, I do put like a 2 if there was 2 books read on the same day. So yeah. Okay, so we're gonna skip the next couple pages and move right to my 5-star reads in the 2025 top 12. So obviously I have 2 5-star reads for the month of February. I printed them off and I put them in here. I'm kind of saving this page for the end of the year just because I know that this may change and I don't know how I want to incorporate it throughout the year instead of just doing it at the end. So this may change in the next year's journal, but for now it's going to be blank for a little bit. Then we go into my monthly favorites and book of the year. I chose Catherine Sinter's The Rom-Commers for my February book of the month. And then it goes into the little bracket. I probably won't do like round 2 of the bracket until about halfway through the year, or I might wait until December to see if like I still have the same opinion on these books. That's kind of what I'm going for. All right, skipping the next page but going right into yearly stats. I like to track my books, the pages, hours that I've read, physical copies, audio, ebooks, were they from Libby or the library, did I own them, how many days did I read in the month, and how many 5-star reads did I have. And as you can see, I have read 10 books, 3,559 pages. I read for 52 hours. 10 of the books were physical copies. I also listened to half of the books, and I also used 4 of the ebooks. 3 of the books were from Libby or the library, and I owned 7 of them. I read the entire month of February, and I had 2 books that were 5-star reads. Just a little bit of an update on the series tracker. This is a look at it so far. I don't think I have completely colored in everything yet, but we're still working on it. We will hopefully have a video soon of all the series that I'm in the middle of. Then we go into my genre tracker. Last year, it looked a little bit different, but it's mainly like the same thing. The goal for this is to show me how many books that I'm like not reading and what I should maybe dive into. As you can see, it's really dry down here. 6 of the books I read were considered romance, 4 of them were considered young adult, 2 of them were considered fantasy, 1 mystery thriller, and 1 lit fic / general fiction, and then 0 for the rest. So hopefully it helps. The goal for this is that this down here kind of has at least a number every single month or every other month, and up here kind of dwindles a little bit, so that way I'm venturing into new things. Now we're going to look into my reading challenges. Let's see the update here. In my 25 books in 2025, I did read 2 books in February off of this list, The Friend Zone and Tangled Up in You. Similar to my last bullet journal video, I messed up Powerless, and I'm so terrible and so sad about it. But I'm just decided that I am going to keep the spine or the color of the book as the color that I color it in, as close to as I can. And if I have like any fun bolded letters, I may try to correlate it to the spine itself, but as we can see, that was a terrible job. For the book club book of the month, it was The Friend Zone by Abby Jimenez. And here's a little update on my A to Z challenge. So far, I am trying to make sure that I start it with the first letter. I don't want to go into books that have the or a before the title. I'm trying really hard to make it where it starts with the letter. And obviously towards the end of the year, if I'm really stuck, I may go back to books that I read and plug them in if need be, if they start with the, or a. Into my book bingo, I still don't have a bingo. I still haven't colored in my free space. Technically, I have listened to audiobooks, but I'm saving this spot specifically for a book that I only listen to. Like, I didn't have the physical copy, I didn't have a Libby Kindle edition of it or anything like that. Like, I only got the book to listen to it, which like sometimes I do memoirs for. So that's why that's not colored in, because clearly I have listened to it, and clearly I also have, well, actually for the ebook, I haven't read a full book on my Kindle yet. I'll do like pick it up here and there, but I have the physical copy. So that's why these two aren't colored yet, which potentially will be colored soon. And as I'm filming this right now, I have a little bit more to fill in for March, but I haven't gotten there yet. But yeah, Rainbow Challenge update. I only added Some Shall Break for February, so a little dry, but I have plans coming soon for the next months to put in here. And then here's my little 2025 themes. I added it, which you're gonna see in just a second. I am so glad that I did this, because this is so cute to look at and to kind of make a mini theme of it. All right, now we just go straight into February. I did the little bow themes, if you didn't see in my TikTok. I thought this was so cute. I am skipping the first page because it's just a calendar, and that's like my personal part in the bullet journal. In another video, you'll see me talking about how I use bullet journaling as a planner, and now it's mainly a reading journal. And so I'm slowly going away from the calendar and just doing reading journal. But yeah, so I also do a little to do for the month in here, and this kind of stays. And I think I might venture out to where it's like just a to-do list and not the calendar, but we'll see. And then you see on my TBR side, I have completed every single book, and I'm so excited and so proud of myself. Now I feel like I want to try to make a smaller TBR and read extra books outside of it and not feel so pressured to finish it, because I finally did it and I reached a goal. So, and then we go into my daily pages, which is just a bar graph of all the pages that I read. Another place in my journal where I can see how many pages that I was reading. And I also track on an app called Bookly. This is just me writing it down and kind of getting another visually appealing way of seeing how much I read. And then on this side, it's all my stats. I'm going to try to zoom in here so you can kind of see at least an example. So I write the title, how many days it took me to read. And by this, it's how many days that I picked up the book. Not like the days in between where I didn't read it. How many days did I pick up the book and actually read it? And so it's a little bit more accurate on how it actually took me to read. And then I draw a little doodle on the type and how I read it. So for the rom-comers, I physically picked it up and read it on my Kindle, and then the rating under it, and then I'll write the rating. I've seen a little bit of other people do a page like this where it's like a lot bigger, and I'm considering doing that. This journal just doesn't have a lot of pages in it for me to be able to do that for each month. And how many books I read, like, I don't know if I'll ever read more than 10 in a month again. Maybe. I hope so. But if I do that, that's going to take up a lot of space. Then at the end of the month, I write the total pages that I read. I messed up here. And this month, I actually needed more pictures in order to print out my books for March, which you'll see in a video coming soon. But because of that, I needed extra pictures to put in the collage so I can print those books. So I decided to just print a picture of me with my 2 5-star reads of the month, and I might keep that. I don't know, maybe not, whatever. Anyway, so that is actually it for how I track all my reads for each month. and I do kind of like a little monthly wrap up, and I do those videos exclusively on TikTok. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I'm so glad that you're here, and I'm so glad that you made it this far. If you liked this video, make sure that you like and subscribe to my channel so you can see more videos by me. If you made it this far in the video, make sure that you comment down below what your favorite read was of February and if you had any 5-star reads. I can't believe that I had 2 in 1 month. That's crazy. Once again, thank you so much for watching, and I can't wait to see you in my next video. Bye!